Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Um, it's a beautiful, yeah, it's a beautiful day today. But anyways, today I wanted to talk about just Chris Reeve Knives in general. I'm just going to refer to him as CRKs. And really, this video was really inspired by a discussion I saw on YouTube with the Bearded Gear, and he was discussing Chris Reeve Knives with another gentleman. And that was a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I really, really just, I agreed at some points, some parts I disagreed, but overall, like, I really enjoyed their discussion. And yeah, if you haven't checked out the Bearded Gear, go ahead and check out his channel, man. He has some really great content. But anyways, yeah, like I said, I just wanted to talk about Chris Reeve Knives in general and just my experience with it and just where they kind of stand in or where they fit in the knife community today, right? So, I've been a knife enthusiast for, I would say, about 10 years or more. And when I first kind of started in this knife hobby, very soon, very quickly, I learned that, CRKs were like the best, pocket knives to get, So that kind of became my goal. That was really what I was kind of aiming for. And I could not imagine myself spending hundreds of dollars on knives. At that time, the most I've spent on a knife was, I believe, the SOG Visionary 2. It was like $90. And so to me, I was like, man, there's no way I'm gonna spend hundreds of dollars, on a pocket knife. But as we all know, man, if you are a knife nut, that will that will go away pretty quickly, right? So as you can see here, I've had the privilege of owning, using, and carrying several of the CRKs, over time, and these are kind of what is in my rotation today. But like I said, I want to go back to the video that I mentioned before with the bearded gear, and from what I got from that video, like I said, super awesome discussion was that, CRKs are really no longer at the top of the food chain, right? And you know what? Yeah, I would agree to some extent. They're not, but also I do want to talk about, I do want to talk about some things that I feel like are worth mentioning. Just a caveat, these are probably things that you've heard many times before, but I just want to say it. All right. Like I said, many years ago when I started in the knife community, man, CRKs were, man, they were considered the very top. There was really no other competition out there, and I really considered them to be, the premier knife manufacturing company in the world. Whereas today I would still consider them, one of the many out there today, because I feel like now it's just, man, it's just, there's so many more options out there, right? I feel like, there's been a lot of changes, right? And no longer are knife enthusiasts like myself, really only just looking for the tried and true, right? If we were only mainly going for like utility or just to have one knife for the rest of our lives, I mean, I don't think we could go wrong with the CRK, or man, even with the Spyderco, right? But at the end of the day, this knife hobby isn't really about that, right, guys? It's really about the camaraderie, the community of trying out new and innovative products, of seeing, like, what other things are out there, what other materials are being used, what can we get with our for our money, right? Because now we could get so much more for our money, whereas, like, back in the day, something like, something with titanium and S30 or S35VN steel might have cost several $100s. Now we have companies like We Knives and Savivi, bringing out awesome knives at like $100 or $200 price point. So I just feel like now, like, the really elite, like, tier is really, really crowded. You have a lot of manufacturing companies out there that, have been able to bring some awesome knives to, to us, the knife nuts, right? And I think we've benefited tremendously from that. But yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead. I just feel like I said, in some sense, yes, Chris Reeve Knives. Um, I don't want to say they've fallen by the wayside, not at all. But I feel like maybe at one point they were considered the very top of the food chain. I feel like now maybe not so much so, and I feel like the underlying reason for that is really the growth and the evolution of the knife community, and really the I would say it's just the emergence of like information, via social media and the internet, right? So in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the internet was still, still a baby. But now, back then, when, back in the early 2000s, I would even say, information was still largely being shared via like phone conversations, AIM, even mail and face to face. So I guess you could say that information was moving at a lot slower pace and in smaller circles. I say with the advancement of technology and the explosion of like social media, now information and conversation is really happening at a hyper speed level, and it extends far beyond just the traditional circles, right? You could you don't really need to know like a bladesmith personally to learn how to make knives. You could Google it, you could YouTube it, you could go on social media and connect with other knife enthusiasts out there and share your experiences and information. And really from there, like, make a knife. I feel like nowadays a lot of, these custom makers, a lot of these, more independent knife makers, that's how they really got their chops is from the internet, right? So no longer does a knife community depend on like a members only mentality or like the apprenticeship model to pass on knowledge. Now everything is pretty much a few keystrokes away at any place at any time. Man, it's really no wonder, right, that knife enthusiasts have really started to expect and demand better, expect more. Innovation has really become the driving factor for really all industries. I would say specifically for the knife industries, right? So you got like heritage brands like Rolex or Rolls Royce, right? They're still desirable, but now they're competing with like companies like Grand Seiko and Tesla. So I feel like overall, as consumers, we've become more aware of what we can get for our money and really what's available to us. Now, coming back, as a knife nut, like I think we've also become more aware of really the nuances of blaze steel, bevels, grind types, ricassos, plunge lines, and tolerances, right? I think we've really discovered that CRK, Hinder, and Strider, don't have like what do you call it? Univocal. I don't know how to say that word, but really, there's more competition at the top now, right? Just because they were considered the best, in the past, doesn't automatically, right, make them the best now, right? And I think that's really I think that's one of the main points that. I don't know if it's the main point, but one of the points that Bearded Gear and was sharing in his conversation. I feel like just because something is really, was considered at the very top, things change, right? There's innovation, there's evolution, right? Even in this knife community. So I kind of want to then go talk about really then what is the point of a legacy, right? The idea of legacy and just how much influence, it has in today and even in the future, right? If we look at some of the most recognizable and successful brands today, I'm thinking like Rolex, Toyota, and Nike, just to name a few. They have a history, right? Like in really pushing the limits of doing what was thought impossible at the time. But with time, these brands firmly really seeded itself in our consciousness for better or for worse. Hey, Peppa, shh, it's okay. They have largely, been successful in translating, their history into a relevant and a compelling force with innovation and creativity that still, is still really just relevant, today for us consumers. So, so then CRK, also has an incredible history and legacy in the knife community, right? If you've been in this knife hobby for any time, you will have heard about CRKs for sure, right? There's a reason, right, that they've won over 25, industry awards. CRK was directly involved with the formulation of S30V, of S35VN, and now the S45VN, which are perhaps the most popular and well-balanced spec'd blade steels in the market ever, right? CRK invented the Reeve integral lock, commonly known as a frame lock, which is what you see here and what you see in most pocket knives today. CRK's ridiculous tight tolerances of 0.001 of an inch, and by the way, the human hair is 0.008 of an inch, were unmatched, and even today, very, very few can pull it off consistently and as long-term as CRK. And then, let alone, let's talk about the people that CRK has mentored and worked with, right? Just to name a few, we got Anthony Marfione from Microtech. We got Curtis Oviedo and Mark Carey from Spartan Blades. And then we got Bill Harsey. I mean, it's no coincidence that everyone who's ever worked with Chris Reeve Knives, they themselves went on to become some of the most skillful and successful knife makers and companies in the world today. And all that aside, let's talk about the knives themselves, right? So here I got a couple of them. The question really comes down to is, CRKs, have they been left behind as the knife community moves along at lightning speed, right? Are they still at the very top? That was kind of the question I had when I was watching Bearded Gear's video. And I would say, yeah, to a certain extent, yes, for sure. While CRK definitely set the gold standard on how a pocket knife, can be made and used, there are now so many more companies out there, so many more knife makers out there, who have really strived towards this gold standard, and they have either normalized it or have exceeded it. I'm not talking about just tighter tolerances, right? I mean, if we're just to go by tolerances, I would say CRK is still, hands down, at the top. But I'm also talking about like just the innovation and the creativity that, that satiates the never-ending pursuits of a knife nut, right? CRK will always be a monument in the knife community. But now that really, like I said, that elite upper tier space has become more crowded through the development and the evolution of high-end scalable manufacturing that not only like results in knives being made at an incredibly high level, but they're able to integrate and experiment with innovative features at a faster rate. Right? In all reality, man, it's really hard to discern with the naked eye the difference in tolerance between 0.00 1 versus 0.010 of an inch, right? And the knife community, has changed. People want newer, more innovative products that can be discernible visually and in use, right? Knife enthusiasts today are more informed and acutely aware of what they're getting for their money. I would say maybe even 10 years ago, the knife community wasn't so big on the latest, and greatest blade steels. I know because that's where I was, over 10 years ago when I started, in this knife hobby. There wasn't that much information out there regarding steel composition or a comparative study on the pros and cons of various locking mechanisms. For the normal Joe Schmo, there wasn't much to go on regarding what materials can be used on knives. Man, nowadays, the average knife nut is pretty well informed on the various steels out there, what materials demand what kind of money, what factors to look for when judging a knife. Right off the bat, like I'll say a pocket knife with like M30 blade, perfect blade centering, drop shutty action, beautiful acoustics, and wonderful ergonomics and form factor is probably, more desirable today than, the average knife nut, had for a CRK, right? And even if it costs more than a typical CRK, it'll usually have like, more exotic materials like Damascus. It'll have like a steel lock bar insert, cage ceramic ball bearings, beautiful detailing and finishes, and so on and so forth. And so in a sense, I feel like, yeah, CRK has, fallen behind. Not so much because their quality has decreased, but because so many, like I said, knife makers and companies have brought more compelling and innovative products and features to the market today and at rocket speeds. And man, I get it. CRK could very well go down that path and start bringing out some crazy stuff. I know, that they have the manufacturing and the machining prowess to do some crazy things. But you know what? I don't think it's in CRK's DNA as a brand and company. They could start implementing ball bearing pivot systems. They could start using M390 or other blade steels or develop flippers and so on. But they also have to weigh the effects of going down this road as a company, right? Is it true to their brand identity and aesthetics? Will it align with their design and use philosophies? How do they want to grow and evolve? Oops. How do they want to grow and evolve as a company? I think that's something that all companies really ask themselves as they, seek to, really, be successful in any industry. Think twice, cut once. That's like the embodiment of CRK's DNA. That's like their motto. That means that CRK will think through the implication of their choices to do one thing or another. This means they aren't going to adopt the latest fad or trend just to attract like a larger customer base. They aren't going to accommodate every opinion and feedback. They're going to do what they do best, and that is to be CRK. Only time will tell which companies and knife makers will stand the test of time. Us knife nuts, man, we are as finicky as any other customer out there today. 1 year we're all about Damascus and ball bearing pivots. Who knows what we'll be into next year, or next month or next week. CRK isn't about following, but influencing and learning. Their innovation goes at a different rhythm and pace. But one thing that time and time again has shown itself is that their innovations are the most enduring. The beautiful thing about the knife community today is that we have so much more options, right? We can get so much more for our money and have an enormous amount of real-time information and interaction that helps us to make more informed decisions. CRK, like I said, isn't about the latest trends. They are about a deliberate, thoughtful, and precise innovation and growth. Their innovations aren't the flashiest, but they tend to have the most lasting impact on the trajectory of the knife industry, as a whole. Many take inspiration from their timeless design and the silhouette of Sabenza, like you see here, and they seek to emulate its qualities. CRK isn't just about a successful knife company. They've really built a successful legacy. They've really become an icon to be inspired and challenged by. And so I think in this way, I feel like CRK is still very much relevant today. I feel like, they've been around for 20 years, and I think they will continue to be around 20 years from now. I don't know about the other knife companies that are super popular today. Like I said, only time will tell, right? In 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, will some of these companies still exist? Will these companies still, maintain, the high level of products that they deliver today, right? I could tell you one thing, CRK, they have, They definitely have. They are still, they're still here today. They still make these amazing knives. Yeah, they aren't the most fun knives, but I could tell you, these knives will probably be knives that I pass on to my kids, and maybe even even their kids, right? So with that being said, I hope this was, a cool little, video. Yeah, like I said, probably things you've heard before, but yeah, I would like to hear kind of your take and your opinion on where Chris Reeve Knives stand today in the knife community. Do you feel like they are still relevant? Do you feel like they still are at the top of the food chain, or do you feel like they've kind of fallen on the wayside? I would love to hear your thoughts, your questions. You can leave them down below. With that being said, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.